course, we should mention some of our heroes, the representatives of historical gallery France, and the Center Krasny that we mentioned earlier today. And I would like to invite you to start the discussion. So I would like to invite Elena, Ishchenko and Sasha Shestakova that are going to moderate this discussion, and they are going to talk to us and to the speakers that we heard today. And so we are going to speak about the problems that we have now. So I would like to ask all the speakers come closer to the table here at the front. Well, it's not a very nice story, and I want to thank Garage for a chance to share this experience, to tell you this story. And we are grateful that they made a statement for the press about us, because we are under threat of being ousted from the place. So we started our work in March last year as a non-commercial site. We wanted to organize exhibitions based on a democratic principle, like anything, whether it's honey or buying a kettle, has to go through voting, and it becomes possible only when you vote for it. When everybody votes for it. So we wanted to have this festival, Media Udar, and we all voted for it, but last Saturday anti-dealer group came to visit us, that is led or guided by the former deputy from the State Duma, and actually he is being kicked out because there are suspicions that he is using drugs. So they wanted to find drugs, propaganda of Islamic radicalism, because, for example, Avignon girls can be considered that, so they could find it sort of easily. And it would be all funny, but they called police, and they initiated the criminal case, and the organization that give us space at Krasny Oktyabr is very suspicious of us. So you can see some pictures of our center here on the wall, and it's very important for us to strengthen our reputation. We don't want to be drug dealers. We don't want to be associated with drug dealers and drug barons. We are an art institution. So my first question then is determined by this topic and the nature of the places that we're discussing today, other places. So we use other in quotation marks, because it means alienated space, which does not belong to people that are using it for exhibitions. So these are public spaces, and so they should comply with the public space rules, and also with the organizations that own those spaces. And there's a question about the sense of safety. Do you feel safe in those places? Aren't you afraid that you might be visited by some weird groups that you never heard about? Are you thinking about this? Have you ever thought about this? And another important question that should be raised with regard to these places is interacting with the owners of this places and those people that establish their rules and laws. So are you interacting with those organizations, or are you trying to get close and whether it's difficult or not to work with them? We are feeling fine. We have Yevgeny Samoilov, who is actually waiting for us to become hotter. Because Art Center Makaronka, apart from exhibition space, keeps the theater 18 plus, because there are very special theater productions with lots of swearing words, and we can have as much freedom as we want. So it's like self-censorship that we have, just because our artists have some moral principles. And myself, as a curator, is always thinking about people that come to the exhibitions to our place. But I know everyone in person, so I understand that I'm not going to insult anyone. Nelly raised an issue of self-censorship, so whether these other people's rules can be the foundation for self-censorship. And perhaps Dima or Natasha from Elektrozavod can say something, because Elektrozavod is a system with very strict access rules and some people regret opening the gallery in Elektrozavod because they had to shut down. Well, those that have visited Elektrozavod maybe felt certain restrictions, and yes, you have. There is a very strict control, tough control of the security guards. You can't smoke there, and you have to follow very strict rules. But if you are in some other people's place, you have to reach a compromise with the people that own that place. It's not good to have a conflict with them and then saying something that, oh, you were ousted from their place because you were creating some forbidden art. It's possible, of course. And Elektrozavod is a very complex organism. So there's a community of neighbors, of residents that have been working and living there more than 5 years. So we have to follow certain ethical rules of conduct, because if somebody creates some conditions for conflict, it can affect our other projects or sites. The police can arrive, or they might come to you 10 times a day.
As for self-censorship, well, I derive from two criteria. We are not demonstrating fascist symbolics. We do not demonstrate naked children. Say, well, if there is no limitation of 18 plus, and that's why one of these exhibitions was shut down, because, well, there were some adolescent nude images. Well, but sometimes we have interesting cases when security also gets engaged in the process. They come, they watch on this, what's there on the walls, and sometimes we have great dialogues. Like, for example, like at the exhibition yesterday, well, the security girl gave pretty profound, good comments concerning some, works, some art, some she criticized, some she liked, well, and we're very open to comments, well, but some of them pretty close, to the authorities, and, being too close to authority means, well, certain degradation and moral decay. Well, also, as for situation in Rostov, back in 2013 we had the Festival of Street Art, where we invited several artists, well, some from Kiev, some locals, and we understood that there is no reason in limiting them in certain space, and also in their interaction with the city. There should be no stops as well, no hurdles. So we resolved all possible problems with the authorities by just incurring into the budget, well, certain, amount for fines and penalties. So the artists really could feel free, not thinking about such risk. Well, and another important thing concerning the audience, what the previous speakers had mentioned, and that's what I'm calling for all the guests, because people not always understand where they're actually located, even when they're trying to leave the place, not through a formal exit, or sometimes having disputes with the security. But they say, well, their logic is, we came to you, so that means you owe us something. No, we owe nothing. And that's utterly important, this kind of responsible attitude of the public. Sometimes this is what's missing. Yes, man, we're fully dependent on the will and goodwill and wishes of Edward Pichukin, well, the sole owner of our gallery. So we were thinking quite often to ourselves, how long we'll sustain, a month, for another year, or maybe, who knows, well, especially that we've been there since 2007, for quite a long while. But in every situation, we don't know how the stage is going to turn out, and when we understood that we totally depend on one person's will, we decided to engage him very deeply into the contemporary art. So we took the role of, enlighteners. We've been talking with him about the role of contemporary art. We've been sending him information all the time, just giving some notions that, for example, on Gafonov's exhibition, and explaining the importance of his exhibition. And now, well, Edward is the general director of Len Film Studios. I came up to his webpage and I saw that he has a separate site, and one of them, on one of the pages is just entitled, benefactor, patron of the arts. And then it seems that after, our permanent encounter and, engagement of him there, he got already involved in the matters, and thanks to that we're not paying operating expenses like electricity and water and so on. And I want to ask Koля Alexeev, as I understand, well, this site was provided by the authorities, so it's federal, it's the state property, so there might be a chance when some inspection may come up just under the pretext of checking the status of the premises, but also with a certain censorship idea. No, this is not exactly the state-owned property. Well, it used to be the vocational school, and prior to that, just a seminary. And well, once we came there saying we're here, recommended by the governor, and they say, okay, keep it and hold it. And they signed without a wink rent lease agreement for 5 years. So when they were coming to check the exhibition, nobody was asking what exactly we've been doing. Moreover, we are kind of decoying them. Every year we had greater, and we had group exhibitions. And then for the next half year, we had kind of, who knows what, kind of a topsy-turvy situation, concerts, parties, and not one exhibition. And starting from last spring, so the premises were given for the studios, for the artists. We just give them out and say, okay, you pay the operating expenses and use the studios. And now every week we have a solo exhibition or this or that artist, and we learn about that only when we come with visits there. Nobody ever asked any permits. And only one situation where we had some kind of problems conditionally when this gallery chlam, rags, something at the president, some kind of people's council, some Putin supportive, organization. So these guys started, putting together some kind of a shitty complaint, just demanding just to shut down the exhibition. How come? Well, we're doing good art and they're doing crap. So basically that was, the main message they were sending. And also in the media there was some kind of, accusing articles, blaming articles. They were also writing some letters addressed to me, also kind of negative character, and I responded. Well, I said, if you want us to shut down, okay, we'll do it. It'll just make our life easier. And they stopped this, And so now we decided to open the Museum of Modern Art. So now we're looking for a plot of land where we want to build some greenfield place. Well, and there is no opportunity in the center of the city. Well, I want to continue by saying that after my presentation at the Elektrozavod, I had a case of censorship. There was a very strict security control, and the administration of Elektrozavod was controlling all the publications, any notion in the media, and that was kind of conflicting with economic, rationales of Elektrozavod. I wouldn't go into details, but I just want to make a notion that yes, we had some, cases of censorship. May I ask ask a question or make a comment? Last Saturday we were talking about certain, feeling of fear, and it was said that we should take some therapy course for just, strengthening our nerves. Probably there are two levels of unpleasant sensations. I mean, censorship and self-censorship. Otherwise, bans and external, pressure from the authorities, which sometimes is very unpleasant. And another most horrible and unpleasant for me is, counteracting from the big open society to whom the art is appealing. That's why I was thrilled to hear about initiatives in much smaller towns, not like Moscow, because in Moscow you can easily get lost in the kaleidoscope of events. And that's what I think, that in Samara, Voronezh, or Nizhny Tagil, it's much more difficult to hide away from the society, and we all know well that society in most cases have very vague idea about art, and contemporary art especially. And I have a question. Well, so inside self-organized art groups, which a priori make themselves much more publicly exposed than those hiding in apartments, how much more time is taken for educational programs? If this role can be somehow related and put into the framework of self-organized art groups, or this role should be given to somebody else. No, yes, we have such initiatives, well relevant to, educating of our audience. I mean, we already tried it with the visitors of our exhibitions, but usually every public exhibition is followed by a very detailed presentation explaining what is exposed and exhibited. Every artist, or if the painter himself is not prepared or willing to talk, communicate with public, well, so we explain his position, and quite often I express my personal position, not from the professional standpoint, but from rather amateurs or fans standpoint, just stirring up, communication dialogue with the audience, because quite often if you start dominating as a professional, postulating certain positions, people simply leave silently. But when you talk with them on the same language, started like saying, well, I personally also not a big fan of this work, they start asking questions, you get engaged in communication, and this is a more productive way of communicating with the spectator. Quite often also we have lectures, which I moderate mostly personally, but again I present them from my own perspective, my position, and I'm always saying that this position can be argued and confronted, because people definitely affect and shape up, the future of art. Otherwise. Also, I'd like to refer back to the first question by saying that for a long time we felt secure in our small garage, and we had very close, friendly relationship with the owner of garage till the very last moment. But it's already not because of our gallery's activities, but it's mostly because of some activities of the artists, individual artists. Well, lately we had a kind of activity where on the posters in the São Paulo we hung the refs, burial refs, and had buried all the art, created in the streets. So that was our conflict with graphic faculty. Now I feel quite secure because in the first case we were under very serious attack from the public opinion concerning education issue. We think about this, and the conditions in our gallery, well, don't make it possible to arrange any lectures or other events. Hopefully we'll soon we'll have a more appropriate location, a more convenient place. Well, it's pretty a cool situation from Ekaterinburg, from agency of Art Politica at School of Modern Contemporary Art. Many of its students are now currently living and exhibiting in Moscow, and they quite often make notion of this, feeling of fright or scare, and quite often they're creating this kind of heroic deeds. Well, it's well known, Nikolai exhibition curated when they installed the concrete letters, Vlast, power, otherwise, and it was like declared as a public art program. They didn't get the permit because, this huge, heavy concrete words making the word Vlast, such big letters, and then just to blow up this situation. Naila and Ksenia in a very creative move. So they said it's just a performance for installing these letters, and they just cut off the rope from the crane which was installing, and then this performance had transformed into the installation, into the public art. And so their artists are quite often daring to make such, brave public gestures. Well, continuing this talk about interaction with authorities. Well, in the current political situation, we see a pretty strong, contradiction between conservative authorities and liberal society or civil society or its remnants. So, and once we have this kind of stand out with global authorities, or maybe it's better just to leave away and dodge this direct confrontation. Well, most of our artists stay out of politics, so we don't have such problems. Well, concerning the question if there should be some contradiction with authorities, it's a very interesting and a very profound, fundamental issue because, withstanding or opposition to the authority starts from Freud's brochure, I and it, and our agency of singular studies, is the research or surveying initiative, and in the conflict or contradiction or withstanding, we're not very much interested. We're more looking for disclosing the reasons, the basics of the reality in which we exist. Well, on the one hand, it's not so easy to understand the nature of our activities. We're a standard quasi-activist, conservative quasi-activist, although our agency is quite open for discussions, and I would be very happy to have an argument, a discussion with a conservative quasi-activist, if such person would come up to our meeting. But generally we're of course interested and looking forward for a critical dialogue and with authorities, and authority is a very kind of multi-faced creature. It exists in the form of self-control in the people, and some kind of intangible trends in the society, and that the society is also not homogeneous, because on the surface, in some kind of daylight conscience, we have a conservative majority of society demanding not to demonstrate this and that, whose feelings are hurt and insulted by this or that apartment. But as you know, all the children in our country on the web daily can see things which really would drive nuts most of the adults if they could see it. So we have certain dualism which exclude any talk about some kind of prevailing social trend, and it seems to be quite an interesting social situation. And although concerning art, and we try to deviate from the subject of art in our agency because it contains quite a lot of spectacular elements, we try to move towards more deeper, more fundamental research projects, and one of the most interesting projects is just this, dualism, of modern society. Well, I'd like to just ask exacting questions concerning position of Rostov artists. Well, from 1990s, as it was back in 1990s. Although that, Rostov artists, they're not engaged in, sorting out, the relations with authorities. They kind of sort out their, attitudes, relations with art on the personal level. Perhaps I wouldn't spend much of your time for any further explanations. I think just a very notion of this makes it quite clear. Well, I'd like to leave the floor to Alexandra. What? Okay, briefly, I think the way you presented, Sasha, as kind of withstanding or some contradicting, I think, well, the authority is just a very kind of complete term. It was always pretty bad, and to make subject of art just politics, it's a kind of tautology, and that we are making an independent site is already political statement in itself. Well, on behalf of a singular research agency, which is small collectively, well, one of our projects will be dedicated to this apolitical, groupings of young artists, because sometimes, well, it's just an expression of some naive, pure energy, and sometimes it's quite of a conscious, instrument used by the authorities. And this is what we'd like to investigate as our future project. For example, your gallery, Alexeev, is a good sample of a political gentrification of art for middle class. But if it takes 7, well, it's political, and no big deal. So we rent the space for our own money, but perhaps we're not very calm, because our first base, we lost it because it was taken away from us. But what else we could expect, since we rented it from the St. Pete Union of Artists? And another reason, we had very low, cheap rent. Well, one of the conditions was that it also had to room the sauna, where, members of union were taking steam. We understood that this symbiose wouldn't last for long. Then they kind of squeezed us out, well, because they needed vapor and privacy. And then, of course, women.
Maybe it's normal for this country. Otherwise, we have to go and change the rules. Would anyone like to add something? If not, then I wanted to ask you 2 questions. The first question is related to your interaction with other sites, whether you have such interaction and what kind of process it is, how you interact with others. And the second question is about how open or closed you are. Whether you feel open towards public, towards the art community, or you're more closed. Well, we have to clarify these 2 questions. Well, speaking about interaction, you have to interact with other institutions. You choose whether you choose a commercial way of operation, whether you work like large arts institutions, whether you want to collaborate with other bigger institutions, for example, or do you prefer to collaborate with other self-organized art initiatives only, or you are open to any kind of collaboration? Perhaps you could give us some examples of successful cooperation and cooperation that failed. We often work with curators Треугольник. They are also located in Elektrozavod. We had some great projects. We also collaborate with Rodchenko School. And we actually give the common statement and unite our spaces. We sometimes invite external curators. And so Elektrozavod Gallery is open for any kind of dialogue and collaboration. Of course, it depends on the art language, on aesthetics and views. We haven't really had any experience of collaborating with state or governmental institutions, but it's not that we refused from it. Oleg Leonin was the last person who worked with us. And this question is probably related to institutional projects. Well, we do interact with institutions. It's very important to hold your stand, to express your position, to stick to it. Well, speaking about our organization, Непокоренные, Unconquerable, we never confront the authorities. For example, we always positioned ourselves as a non-commercial organization. We were interested in inviting and involving as many people as possible because we are focused on selling our art, because that's a method to survive, to be independent. So we wanted to become fully independent through sales, to sponsor our gallery, to show what we wanted. So we were looking for different forms of interaction with wider audience. We are having exhibitions on external sites. We interact with different social institutions, Русский Музей, Russian Museum, Marble Palace, also part of the Russian Museum, and others. So it's not that we want to say that we want to be a part of the underground movements. We are interested in, addressing a wide audience and even pop culture. I can compare us with the form of cooperative because we had an exhibition with Milan as part of Milan Triennale. We worked with the French Cultural Institute. They gave us courses on French language studying. We also worked with different embassies. So we worked with international organizations a lot. And in Germany, in America, in some other countries. The organizations share their experience, how they received grants and how they become organizations that can pay their costs easily. Well, as the agency of singular studies, I can say that our ideal of culture and society would be an open society in its typical understanding. So this is the form of society and the culture which is a good model, which is very open, which is non-hierarchical. This is something everybody needs in today's country. So our agency doesn't have to be linear, but it can actually does a lot of work to support our ideals, to move towards our ideal. And we work together with real institutions and imaginary institutions in order to reinforce our values and to assert non-hierarchical culture. Well, I think they are the questions related to the past. We think that communication with authorities, with the government in Samara isn't very relevant because all the art is apolitical. So they are focused on art and nature, and they aren't interested in the government, politics. So, of course, we have to pay for electricity, for water. We have to clean the premises. We have to take the garbage to take it out. We rented the space from a commercial structure, and they didn't really care. We just had to pay money, and that's it. And when we moved out, a year or 2 years later, so the director of this commercial organization came to us and said, "Oh, I didn't even know what you were doing here. I could reduce the costs for you." So there is this understanding that if it's an art institution, you can give them different requirements. So everybody performs their own functions. And a couple of years ago, when we were moving from that site, and some friends said that, "Oh, I have a friend who is the assistant to the mayor, and she can help you to find a good place." So I had a meeting with her, and so she introduced me to a person who was responsible for the property in the city, and this lady showed us a place that we could use for our studios and workshops. So I chose a place, and so I had to write a letter, and I had to refer to this government official so that I got the cheapest rates. And then a couple of days later, I was called to a meeting. So, special authorities monitored that situation, and we decided not to go there and never to contact them again. So this is like an example of interacting with authorities and the government. Well, as to Rostov, we never really had any problems with space because we never looked for anything. Space is always available, and all the institutions that are related to contemporary art are private institutions. They are related to business. And it's not quite clear why they want to encourage some art initiatives at some point, but they don't last more than 3 years. And as to interacting with other self-organized art initiatives, we worked with KC, and we collaborated with Krasnodar Center for Contemporary Art. There is a gallery of street art Sviter in Yekaterinburg, and I'd love to work and talk to them more. An important factor when we select sites is an opportunity to change the space and environment. For example, why we are still based in Art Center Makaronka is because we can do whatever we want with our rooms. For example, in some museums, they have some requirements that we have to comply with. Some other places don't have good lighting and we can't bring our own things. Some try to save energy costs, like electricity costs, and so they again impose some restrictions. So we don't like that, and we always work with those who are ready to take some risks while working with us. I didn't want to say anything, but now maybe I understand that I should say something. So we worked with Krasnodar Institute of Contemporary Art. We had our exhibition in Makaronka Center. We had an exhibition at Wiener Fair on a brief history of contemporary art. Yana Malinovskaya is another curator that we worked with in Divnogorye Museum, and there is a land art festival that has taken place twice in the last 2 years. We also work with the Museum of Fine Art. We organize our exhibitions on their site. And I wanted to ask the same question to Ksenia from Kupiva Gallery, because you also had some experience which is important for us, for you, because you are the smallest initiative and you represent the smallest city, and this interaction is very important for you. It's true, we actively collaborate with different institutions in the city, the Museum of Fine Art and the library, the city central library, and they opened a gallery for contemporary art Space Place recently. We also work together with Belinsky Library, GETSC in Yekaterinburg, then with Gallery Okno, window in Chelyabinsk. And when we had an opening, all the museum workers were very happy and welcomed us, because this niche was not occupied yet, and the lady from the Union of Artists came to us and wanted to publish some information about us on their website. So we are working with Guest Networks organization in our city. So we work with everyone. What we don't like is when we, for example, can't paint a wall or can't change something, but on the whole it's fine. I also wanted to ask you to step away from interaction and get down to personal strategies, and ask you about the conflict of interests. Artists and organizers, whether they have conflicts of interest, and how do you deal with this, if you have ever had it. So let's say there are managers who is responsible for like painting walls or doing wiring. We have a technical director, and he is also a director of the foundation, so we always discuss different opportunities with him. He, for example, doesn't like some of our initiatives related to space transformation or space modification. And no matter how much he dislikes it, he is still trying to help us. He lets us do some stupid things to make some interesting decisions with regard to space. If you have to deal with space organization, you have less time that you can give to your own art practices. So, does it affect you as artists? It's a question to everyone. I stopped being an artist. I can share our experience of непокоренный, unconquerable. Well, like any art institution, of course, there are some conflicts. Curators or art director seeing the development in one direction, artists are seeing our development in different direction. Then the conflict related to the interest rate, how much they should take. And we heard today about horizontal links or horizontal connections. Of course, I can speak about our experience, and for us it's very important to be able to listen and to make agreements, to agree on some things. And we had administrator because we distinguish between artists and administrators. At some point I was doing all the curatorial work, now it's Nastya who does it, and we are responsible for all the organizational issues. Natasha, Dima, Kolya, Sever 7, Maxim. It's simple with me. I do management work during 1 week. I watch TV series the second week. Then the third week is when I go to work, and the fourth week is when I do art. Because if you do all 4 things at the same time, you have 4 times as little time for those things. Why do you have this title, непокоренный, unconquerable? You collaborate with everyone, you sell a lot of things. That's a paradox. I'm just curious. We never surrender. Even when we sell art, we never give up. You never give up? No. But it's much easier. We are located in the avenue of Проспект Непокоренных, on the avenue of Unconquerable.
Well, concerning if it helps us or just stands in the way, I don't think it's the main issue worth discussing, but everybody's kind of finding solutions. You see, when you do nothing, well, there's too little time left. When you're busy, again, same little time is left. But don't you get this, don't you get fatigue or kind of feeling worn out when you start developing the site? It's kind of spinning off, developing, well, taking more and more of your time. Well, I say when you get tired of the first one, you start the next one. Yes, I agree with Dima, and I just want to add that for keeping the existence of this or that group, well, it really, you need to give 100% of your time and energy. Well, it's not issue. Well, it's kind of complete dedication and full spending of your resources for the development of the site. I mean, personal resources. If it stands and somehow intermingles and contradicts my art practices, I want to say that, the Elektrozavod had formed the artist's world, because in the process of making projects and communicating with the artists, and we have a special, discussion club where we get together and where we discuss the problems, and this dialogue between our peers had helped me to kind of form myself as an artist. And if there were no Zavod project, I would be sitting here as an artist. So definitely there is influence, and these two things are closely intertwined, interconnected. Administrating, and just all other errands involved, and you have to coordinate things to balance them. And if you have really passion for what you're doing, that doesn't constitute a problem. Now we hear the guys, mostly young guys, from these art initiatives. I think it's not quite proper to address this question to them, but we have Maxim Ilyukhin already completed 3 initiatives, and I want to ask you about the conflict of interests of artists and space organizers, and this, fatigue. Yes, I may say about the fatigue. When you get tired, you get some sleep, you wake up recharged. And in this sense, independently of what a man had done, he's working, he's getting tired, gets to the point of fatigue, then he takes rest and starts anew. And the second question, conflict of an artist and organizer of space. And why you close it? Well, simply got tired of it, that's it. Because when it gets boring, sometimes I think about, boredom, some kind of a positive feeling. When you're tired of doing something, it's a pretty good reason, motivation to stop it. But why did you get tired and bored? Bored, just got bored. It's very important to catch up at this moment in time, and I always keep close watching this, signal ringing, the warning signal. Well, you got bored, and it's time to stop it, because we heard lots of, talk about different kind of aspects of resistance, and I think that generally people are pretty resistible by nature to the conditions, outside conditions. But there's another trend to let in and surrender to this kind of imposing care, because I want to say that conflicting spectator is a more interesting one rather than the accepting and agreeing one. And I think that second option really is something what leads to boredom, because when you receive this kind of accepting and agreeing reaction, it's really leading to bore. I also want to add something, that we were really lucky that we don't have the task of promoting of the square meters and just leasing out, and so that the people who own this art center, and then understand that the space it's a temporary phenomenon, and artist is something for long. But this question is kind of extension of the previous one, but in a more kind of condensed form. It's the question for those who are attempting to do something in the regions or in the provinces, and as recently was written by Koshurnikova, some are art critic and curator, and now the artist too, who released a book dedicated to regional art scene, and his article he's saying that for any artist attempting to do something, to work in the region, he's facing a choice to stay here in this town where there's practically nothing, or to leave for Moscow or St. Petersburg to study there and continue developing as an artist. So I have a question to those who are attempting to do something in the regions currently. Did you ever face this dilemma, and why you still decided in favor of staying there to do something in your home places? Yes, I faced this choice, and I was going to study at the Institute of Contemporary Art under Natalia. Many of artists participating in the laboratory today are trying to realize themselves somehow, to continue their career in Moscow. And why I personally had returned to Rostov, and why? Because Rostov gives good opportunities for development in the direction which are interesting personally for me, where I try to kind of realize, to contemplate what the artist is all about. And I don't think that any super important processes are happening in Moscow, and that's why that was the core of my conflict with Stroganyan, who said you have to move your ass just to get developed. But I don't agree with him that Moscow is the final destination for regional, provincial artists, and I can say comfortably engage in art even on some kind of island, just if I can keep connection with the outside world. And I can share with my experience why I'm in Samara but not in Moscow, although I lived for a while in Moscow in the past. I think just the very nature of human being. All people are kind of different creatures, and it depends on your individual, level of comfort in this and that environment. For me, I feel much more comfortable in my hometown, Rostov, only, occasionally coming to Moscow. Even just touching, the marginal aspect of, artistic events, and also some, symbols, some signs really mean a lot to me. Well, it may inspire me. Well, nobody rejected and denounced mobility, even if you live in Rostov, Samara, Nizhny Tagil. You can always go to see an exhibition or a show, or Ksenia. We always hear, this, issue if we should stay in Tagil or should leave and go somewhere. But the first thing which, connects us together is our friendship, and we have very strong feeling of, mutual support. But then we face another issue of segregation. Otherwise, all the awards and support to the young artist is going to the capital artists from Moscow and St. Pete. Otherwise, there's no support rendered for, artists from small organizations, from small towns. And in Rostov we have quite a lot of premises, but nobody wants to give them and rent them out. Always, the lessors always cling to very high rates. But nevertheless, you stay there in your places, yes? Well, Alexeev, maybe you have something to say. Well, my answer would be quite simple and straightforward. Well, I'm here in Moscow as a visitor, but in Voronezh, I'm a chairman of the board, just, big fish in a small pond. But in Moscow, well, some big museums are going to pop and open, but I can open my dacha, a museum of my own. And for example, if I come to Moscow and sell my work for 5,000 euro, well, according to Voronezh rates, it's year of life worth, and in Moscow, even not close to that. Does it make sense to move over? And yes, and a sense of comfort. And then our girls are going now to Germany. And we, for example, had brought a group of students from Leipzig Academy of Art to Voronezh, and they were very happy, and the girls were happy. So both parties are happy. Well, in principle, still we have another question. Yes, another perk, another bonus. Now they're creating some kind of rebranding of a region. Some kind of trendy designers are now designing new logos for our town, and they're sending, PDF versions from the government, asking to select the best way, select the retrograde, making no difference, absolutely similar to the old one. And nobody called from the Moscow government so far. No questions from the floor. I just want to make a comment concerning this issue. I am a Moscow-based artist, but I didn't work much in Moscow. I think that today, well, something's really developing in the regions, and if it's the case, that might be a much more interesting process rather than engaging into already overloaded boiler of development in Moscow, where we already have all the processes here, like Maxim said, well, when you get tired, you get exhausted, fatigued, and sometimes you get a feeling that everything is already developed to the pretty high level, when everybody thinks that, well, it's all getting kind of boring and tiresome, and that's why many artists think that it's not that interesting at all. So in this sense, where in places where certain deficiency and there's some trend for development, it's more it's a livelier situation, and the deficiency of knowledge and information about how to do it and what, there is no such thing, because now everything is permeable. Well, you don't have to go to Moscow to learn what's going on in the art world. Everything is affordable, lots of, sources and resources on the web, and information exchange is already going on among the artists in the capitals and the regions. So this integration and mutual penetration of information is happening much faster. So in places where it's just in the initial phase of development, it still didn't get too much, heavy weight. So perhaps it's healthier for artists to be in such situations. That's the point I want to make. Any other comments, questions? How cool you are, how smart you are. and how to call it in how to make it trendy, flashy. But my big concern is certainly silence concerning the context of Moscow region's relation. Now you see, now we put there political scientists because it makes no sense to put ablaze any other door than FSB main entrance on Lubyanka, and however you qualify this person, your colleague or not your colleague, not an artist who he got a lot of feedback from mass political media, and he appropriated this space which was never considered as a space of art. So otherwise we're facing a paradigm unknown whatsoever in the region, because this person moving around with his art space wherever he wants. If he gets there, just fine. If he doesn't get there, well, failure. So do you have any kind of this phenomenon in the region? Can you come up with your own mobile art space? To be honest, I'm sorry. What relation does it have to self-organizing initiative? No, we're dealing here self-organization just over one person who can do it in any point. No, he organized certain communication, some publicity rather. Well, may I remind the audience why we're here and what we're talking about. When the artists are gathering around about the events which are created not by them but by other artists, what you are talking about here is a totally different subject, worth of talking about, but absolutely different event. But as for a self-organizing person, I think really it's possible in any point on earth and carry around your own place with you. Yes, I can make a comment concerning this issue. I can say yes, that all relates to the language of art and interpretation of the art language. And I think what's happening now in the self-organized communities is kind of training, mastering this language, because by showing art to each other, viewing it, sometimes commenting it, and sometimes taking it as part of real life, I think this is the way for us to develop this community art. And for me, it's very easy, not a problem to interpret this act of Pavlensky. It's not a problem for me to see it as a kind of artistic expression or act of art, and then already you can analyze it as a kind of photo composition, also through the prism of organization and succession of steps in organization of this show. So for me it's not a problem to see as kind of theatrical or artistic act. But for me, being able to view it in this prism, well, we need the experience of the art communities or art initiatives,
Okay.
where this language is being developed.
I have a comment related to the language. We had lots of different programs, beginning with lectures on the history of arts, that didn't really seem very productive to us, and finishing with a school when we have masters, teachers, and students. But it's very often that people ask me how you can teach contemporary art, for example, to those people that have never seen any contemporary art. I can say that most of the people in our city have never ever seen any art. They haven't seen contemporary art, they haven't seen old art or ancient art, because our museum is in a very dilapidated state. For example, we have Koshurnikova Archaeological Museum, and this is one of the most significant Stone Age place. They have an excellent collection that has international importance, but the way they represent it makes it unclear. It's like a range of some rarities and some photos from the internet. It's like a post-internet and not a museum. Some handouts, printouts, and for example, there's polylithical Venus and a sign saying polylithical Venus. So I wanted to have a tour, so I asked if I could have a tour guide, because it's not, nothing is clear from those interpretations and descriptions. So, and he explained that in one archaeological Venus was a source of like lots of exhibits, whereas we have just a full format page saying polylithical Venus. And we are in contact with people that visit exhibitions or lectures. For example, if we show them ancient frescoes, they would criticize them. We have an excellent collection in Arts Museum, but no one has ever seen that collection. So if you teach art, you should teach art and not contemporary art. I forgot why I mentioned this. Now we are going to launch an innovative educational program. So once every fortnight we are going to have meetings, and they're going to be entitled "What are the things that make me kneel?" And so any artist, any journalist who has been to Italy, and so he sees Botticelli's work, so he begins to cry, he falls down on his knees. So every person should explain why they're impressed by Botticelli or by Malevich or Pavlensky, something that makes them fall down to his knees. We are also having to make this way to contemporary art in our gallery. And it's very important to make our community to be more educated. So I provided some texts, so they read Walter Benjamin and then began to wonder why I had to give it to them. Why are you giving us this text if we just want to do art? I hope that today's meeting is very important for everyone. Despite that all these self-organized initiatives got together in a big museum institution garage, but I think we learned a lot of new things, and you had a chance to take a look at yourself when we are all together. I think it's very important. You know that there are lots of places in St. Petersburg, that there is Vetsasi, Gisi, that there is even the Gallery Kupiva in Nizhny Tagil. But when you come together here or in some other place, you feel that you are together, that you are many people. So this feeling is very important. So I think this is the major impression from this meeting today.